afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. This is episode 3 of Buzzbox Live, a monthly series where we bring to you knowledge management, generative AI, use cases of bringing more efficiency into your knowledge work every month. I'm Ketki. I'm the co-founder and CEO of BHyve, and I'm really excited for today's session. This month, we are diving deep into a topic that's relevant to all of you here today, the domain of professional services. Industries like accounting, consulting, research, law, architecture. Now, these are important and very interesting industries for us as BHyve, mainly because they are knowledge-first businesses. What you know, how you apply it, and what comes out of it for your customer is the entirety of the product. The idea that you can use your collective intelligence to help your customers in figuring out new ways of building their business means you are in the knowledge business in the true sense of the word. So that's why we're very excited to focus this month on the overall domain of professional services. One thing we've noticed is that while being a knowledge intensive industry, most of the firms, some of the best firms, often struggle with managing their own knowledge. Insights we hear in conversations are scattered between emails, inboxes, documents, chats, maybe unstructured servers sitting somewhere else. New hirees are spending lots of time trying to figure out where is that project document or how do I get that calculation. Sandeep himself gave us an example of a time when, as a person in a firm, he ended up doing something which was already done before in a different part of the firm, but he had no idea about it. So teams wasting their time redoing work because the right information isn't available to them. This is a very common problem for all professional services firms. But some of the biggest firms in the world have figured out a way to solve for this. And they are doing it both with scale and intention. For example, we all know McKinsey has an internal AI application called Lily AI, which brings together knowledge of the entire of McKinsey, and it comes at the fingertips of the employee. We had a chance to speak to an ex-McKinsey employee, and he said so much of his time, his team's time, the quality of their work improved because they had Lily as a sort of an assistant helping them through every tiny task that they did. EY, on the other hand, has humanized this. EY has hundreds of people in a department that's called GDS, Global Delivery Services, which just churn out a lot of knowledge which can help their consultants during day-to-day work. Now, of course, all firms cannot have the bandwidth to create a software or to hire hundreds of people. And that's why we've created this platform, BHyve, an AI knowledge management tool to help organizations like you bring that kind of efficiency of a McKinsey or an EY, but into your firms, your growing talent every day. But this conversation is not about our product. I had to do a small plug, of course, but it's about the broader industry shift that we are noticing. That's why we've gotten Sandeep into the conversation today. Before I introduce Sandeep, a little bit of story. Sandeep and I met, Sandeep, I think it was exactly about 2 years ago at a generative AI panel discussion. Yes?
That's right. That's right. And that too
And
focused on knowledge management.
exactly, yes. And of course, back then, generative AI was just 6 months old concept. People were still trying to understand कि ये हो क्या रहा है? What is this magic that we are seeing? We had some early use cases that we had discussed, but there was a lot of inhibition, a lot of fear, a lot of reluctance from all industries to say that, okay, how will this actually help us in our day-to-day business? Today, the scenario is much more different, and that's why, Sandeep, it will be exciting to hear your inputs on what you are noticing across the spectrum of companies you've worked with and seen as to how they're using AI for knowledge management and in general to improve the efficiency of their work. Sandeep, one interesting quote that came from our last webinar was that knowledge management is not a separate exercise. It is essentially using your knowledge effectively every day. Think of it like an operational exercise that you are doing to improve the outcomes that you can guarantee to your customers, right? And so that's what we will cover today. I'll do a quick introduction of Sandeep. Sandeep, thank you so much for being here. Sandeep is an seasoned IT industry analyst and consultant with close to 15 plus years of consulting experience across multiple companies. The latest being he's a managing partner at Consultier, and he was working for a very long time with IDC before this. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies and emerging IT firms on corporate and business strategy, business growth, go-to-market, channel partner strategy, and overall corporate development. He's also been a trusted advisor to technology companies on strategic decision making. On the academic front, Sandeep holds an MBA from EDHEC in France, a postgraduate business degree from Indo-German Training Institute, and a bachelor's in biotechnology. Um, Sandeep, our intention of having you here today is to understand what's changing with AI in professional services and how should professional services firms think about this change for their own companies. Sandeep, so glad to have you here. For a couple of talk points from you before we jump in.
Great. Thank you so much, Ketki. And thank you so much, the BHyve team. It's a pleasure and privilege to be on this webinar. And I think it's a lovely audience that we have. It's a full house. It is great interacting with you, Ketki. And I would love to share whatever insights I've gathered over the last 10, 15 years. I have myself been a knowledge worker. I have been associated with the professional services industry for well over 15 years now. And I've had the privilege of also speaking to a large number of decision makers working in the IT as well as knowledge management space. Even in my current role as the managing partner for Consultier, which is a global analyst firm focused on data analytics, AI, and generative AI, I have conducted a survey, a global survey on enterprise information management. I'm going to use some of the insights of this survey in this conversation as well. I'm excited, look forward to having this conversation with you, Ketki.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. That's a very good context, Sandeep. So we're going to jump right in. Let's start with where the industry stands today. Tell us what is the current state of AI in professional services? What is the need for bringing it in? What are sort of bottlenecks or challenges that can be addressed with AI, specifically generative AI, in your observation?
Sure. So let's look at where the industry stands right now as far as AI and Gen AI is concerned. I'm going to club both these terms, AI and generative AI, together for this particular context, which is enterprise information management or enterprise knowledge management. And I'm going to base my answer on the survey that we have done, specifically about 200 odd global organizations and 70 odd large and very large enterprises in India. So this survey includes 70 large and very large organizations in the country. So if you look at the overall knowledge management space and the application of generative AI, we have found out that a very minuscule proportion of companies in India have actually been able to implement Gen AI in enterprise information management across a larger number of use cases. So, and the interest towards generative AI in information management is actually quite high. According to our survey, more than two-thirds of the organizations have either already moved ahead with their use cases, or they are actively exploring Gen AI use cases, or they're working on Gen AI pilots. So this is actually a very, very high number. So, and there are only a handful of organizations which have not thought about using generative AI in enterprise information management. Having said that, there are, and let me also give you an idea of the different kinds of verticals that are looking at using generative AI across managing the entire information management. So there are industry verticals like BFSI, banking, financial services, insurance. And there are industry verticals like pharma and chemicals. Obviously, there are research firms, professional services firms. Ketki, you mentioned about McKinsey, BCG, Bain. All of them have their own specialized centers. So McKinsey has a specialized center in Gurgaon. BCG has one in Bangalore. And there are other EY and PwC and all the big four and big five audit and consulting firms. All of them have their own specialized knowledge management delivery centers, and all of them are using tools. If you look at other professional services firms like research firms and analyst firms like IDCs of the world or Gartners of the world, I'm just taking names. I'm not explicitly calling out any specific tools that each of these firms is using, but for just for the general awareness of the audience, all of these professional services firms have started exploring AI and Gen AI based tools, not only for external customers, so they're giving access to all of these Gen AI powered information management tools for their customers, but they're also extensively trying to leverage all of these tools for their internal use cases, mainly for their employees. And Ketki was referring to one such example where I was involved in a certain project and I wanted to, search and find some relevant information about that specific project. And I found out I was not able to actually dig out any information regarding that specific project. And after the project was completed, I could find out from some of my colleagues based in Western Europe and based in the US that they have already worked on and executed a similar project already. And if I would have got that information on time, it would have been really helpful for me. I would have exceeded my client expectations in my current project. But anyways, I'm talking about my experience about 3-4 years back. So many professional services firms, including analyst firms, research firms, some of the largest law firms in the country. I've already talked about the audit and accounting firms. Everybody has started using Gen AI tools, Gen AI powered tools for information management and knowledge management. Having said that, showing interest and using or maybe working on pilots is one thing, and yeah, actually being able to use all of these tools for effective knowledge management is an entirely different aspect. And there are different bottlenecks across the entire journey in accessing and organizing and deriving any value from this knowledge that already exists within the enterprise systems. So what we have done is we have looked at different bottlenecks that organizations face in accessing and organizing and using this specific set of knowledge. And we have found out, about 20 to 25 different challenges that organizations face. And I'm going to give you a very short framework. I'm going to give you a framework for identifying and remembering all of these knowledge management related bottlenecks. At Consult here, when we spoke to these 200 organizations, we found out that most of the challenges revolved around 5 key areas. And each of these 5 key areas or sets of challenges could be grouped under using an acronym called STARK, STARK. S
Okay.
stands for structural changes, T stands for technological barriers, A stands for adoption and awareness issues, R stands for relevance and reliability issues, and K stands for knowledge retention and transfer problems. I'm going to explain very briefly about what these specific letters of the acronym mean. So let me just take you through structural challenges. So when we talk about structural challenges, there are certain problems with the way organizations design and govern different processes related to knowledge management. So for example, there are siloed departments restricting knowledge flow. You remember the example that I was giving earlier.
Yeah.
There, the information existed within different enterprise systems in my own firm, but we did not have access to all of this information. So there are
Right.
different silo departments. There are lack of standardized processes for knowledge sharing. There are different bureaucratic hurdles which slow down this knowledge access. Very often there is poor documentation and record keeping practices. And you would also be amazed to know that there's a lack of clear ownership of knowledge assets. People don't really understand who owns what kind of assets.
Correct.
So all of these are different bottlenecks under the structural challenges pillar of the Stark framework. When we talk about technological barriers, this is T technological barriers. There are outdated or incompatible knowledge management systems which exist within
Correct.
organizations. I'm sure the audience would relate to this point that more often than not, there are more than 6, 7 different knowledge management systems or enterprise content management. Whenever we say knowledge management systems, Ketki, I think people confuse these systems also with enterprise content management or document management systems. I mean, that is enterprise information management 1.0. So
Correct.
there are outdated and incompatible knowledge management systems which exist, and more often than not, there are 6 or 7 different knowledge management systems, or ECMs as we call them. And there is obviously a lack of integration between, not only between these ECMs, but also with different IT systems. For example, if somebody may be using an SAP ERP or an Oracle ERP or maybe some other HCM system, there's a lack of proper integration between different IT systems.
Yes.
When we talk of technology barriers, there are also technology areas, for example, search tools. So there is poor searchability and indexing of information. I would believe that in traditional enterprise information management 1.0, this is one of the classic problems. You don't know where your data is, and that means that you cannot properly search information. So that is another huge technology related problem. Then obviously you have data security concerns and over reliance on email instead of centralized knowledge hubs. So there are these technological barriers which exist. If you look at adoption and awareness issues, many employees really don't have any awareness about the available knowledge resources. There is also resistance to adopting new knowledge sharing tools. And more often than not, Kethi, this is because of insufficient training on knowledge management systems. And it also stems from the fact that there are no incentives for employees to use knowledge management systems. Over the last 12 to 18 months, obviously with the use of more and more usage of Gen AI tools, I think this has come down. People have started appreciating the fact that using AI or Gen AI based knowledge management systems has its own set of benefits. But this is a clear challenge that has come up in our interactions with the decision makers as well. If you look at the next group of bottlenecks, which is relevance and reliability issues, so this is mainly the set of problems related with information quality and usefulness. So organizations deal with petabytes of data, and more often than not, this data is in unstructured documents, as you rightly pointed out, Ketki. So there's this information overload, making it extremely difficult for the employees to filter relevant information, and difficulty in maintaining up-to-date knowledge repositories. It's very difficult. So all of this is relevance and reliability issues which pertain to information quality and usefulness. And last but not the least, knowledge transfer and knowledge retention and transfer problems. Many a times organizations have a very high churn ratio. So there's high employee turnover. There's lack of formal knowledge transfer and processes related to KTs. There's difficulty in capturing tacit knowledge from experts. So for example, if I'm a professional knowledge worker, and if I depart from the firm after a span of, let's say, 12, 13 years, it's first of all, it's very difficult for the firm to actually capture all the relevant information that I gathered over that span of 12 years. And then it is extremely difficult to capture that tacit knowledge as well. So that is another major challenge. So these are some common bottlenecks, Ketki, that we have identified, and we have tried to group it under a framework called STARK framework, STARK. I'll just take a pause here. Let me know in case you have any questions here.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great cue, Sandeep. Anybody, you guys have questions, please put them in the chat. We'll take them during and then also towards the end of the conversation. But Sandeep, thank you so much. This is sort of what we have also noticed from our conversations with companies. Apart from the silos and the structural issues and the technology issues, one is adoption and trust. How do I trust that the AI is giving me good, correct answers? How do I drive adoption? How do I make everybody go and search and find in the same manner? Is something that companies struggle with. One interesting observation that hit me recently from some of our user interactions was how Google is really helping. Google and WhatsApp are really helping to that. Because, till ChatGPT was there, it was like a very disconnected experience. You had to go into the app and look. Now, when you run a simple Google search, Google gives you a generative AI answer. So the idea that ready structured answers can come from content is now becoming more common for everybody. So you may have, even not tech savvy people realize that this is possible. That
Yeah,
really opens up sort of the, especially when we talk to senior partners at firms, they are usually, 50 plus, they're probably not very tech savvy, really genius in their work. But now, thanks to a Google or thanks to the fact that Meta AI is now in your WhatsApp, they are seeing this and saying that, okay, then can we apply this into our business also, right? So
absolutely, absolutely.
some of these changes that coming from the big technology guys is helping change the the blockers or sort of the challenges, that blockages that we are seeing in Gen AI adoption at companies. So I
So
thought,
I would just add to that, Ketki, I think November 2022, November 30th, 2022, I think that was a landmark date.
yeah,
I think a lot has changed in the knowledge management space, because knowledge management is definitely one of the first few use cases of Gen AI,
correct, correct,
and a lot has changed after that. And you would hardly find a knowledge worker who's not aware of, I mean,
correct,
definitely everybody's aware of Gen AI, ChatGPT, or Gemini, or any other general LLM based tool. And my guess is that 99% of knowledge workers are definitely using these LLM based tools in some form or the other.
correct.
Definitely.
Correct. So now that we're discussing that they are using these tools, can you give us some high impact use cases you have seen, especially in professional services, where you are seeing tools deployed to give certain results and doing a very good job there? I think that will be interesting to our audiences because then they will try to relate the same into their work.
Sure, absolutely. So if you look at the use cases of Gen AI in information management, again, what we've done is we've taken a structured framework to categorize all of these use cases based on the timeline of adoption. So what we have
Mhm,
done is you could actually visualize all of these use cases in a set of three groups. So for example, there are use cases which organizations have almost immediately adopted, or the adoption, you will see the adoption in the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months. So we call them immediate to near term adoption based use cases. Then
mhm,
there's a medium term, which will be adopted by organizations within the next 12 to 24 months. And then there's obviously a long term adoption of different use cases. So these are the three groups. So what we've seen is one of the most immediate use cases of Gen AI or AI in knowledge management is content creation, content summarization. So that is definitely one of the use cases. So there are umpteen examples available in the market where not only professional services firms, but there are other firms which are using. So there are these huge, humongous documents which exist within systems, and people have to just go through these documents, extract relevant information, and then work on this information. It could either be used in, let's say, some workflow, or it could be used in some customer interaction. It could even be used in some other documents that are being prepared. So uh, content summarization, content generation based on the information which is there. So this is classic information retrieval, extraction and retrieval, and then summarization, or maybe content generation. So these are some specific use cases that are being used in the context of professional services industry, Ketki. So for example, if there are researchers, analysts, consultants, they might use the repository of documents that are there. For example,
mhm,
for the simplest example could be, let's say, a proposal document creation. So suppose you'll have to submit an RFP, request for proposal, so which is basically your response to a proposal for a certain service which is being sought after
mhm,
by the client. So you'll have to prepare, let's say, like a 110-page kind of document, and somewhere the information definitely is there. And more often than not, the deadline to submit this 110-page proposal document is hardly 1 week or 2 weeks.
correct.
More often than I have personally prepared and submitted proposal documents about 30-35 pages, 30-35 slides also in 2 days. Imagine the pain that we had to go through when ChatGPT was not there, or typical Gen AI was not
Absolutely.
there. So
Absolutely.
so this is one specific use case where now you can use AI to not only get relevant information in all the different documents that are there in different systems, but you can also synthesize information, relevant information from these different documents, and then obviously You can also create different sections of that proposal document based on the information that you have extracted. So all of this is possible now. All of this is possible in very, very quick time. Then we are looking at multilingual content translation. I think there are a variety of LLMs which are super effective in translation of translation of content into different languages. That is definitely one. Knowledge-based generation is another use case that we're looking at. So people are looking at creation of structured knowledge repositories from unstructured data and using it for further processing or using it for further action in different workflows. So that is another one. Smart document search, I've already mentioned about that. So those are some immediate to near-term use cases that organizations are looking at. If you look at some medium-term to long-term use cases, some medium-term use cases are automated metadata generation, conversational query interfaces, real-time data classification. I would say that these are some challenges which exist within the overall EIM continuum, and people are going to use AI for solving some of these issues. And one of the most important issues is metadata generation for a large number of documents. Because of the absence of a metadata-based framework for a lot of documents cannot be retrieved effectively. So I think the Gen AI is definitely going to use all of this. It is going to be helpful in all of these activities. So broadly, these are some sets of use cases that we have seen organizations talk about, implement, and some of them have started using the first set of use cases that I mentioned: data summarization, content creation. All of this it is being used effectively by organizations so far.
What is interesting is you mentioned the metadata piece, right? So even when we are doing demos of BHyve, one constant question we get is, oh, we have knowledge, but it's not tagged properly. It doesn't have good titles. There is a research that says that for every document, you will probably have it tagged to 2 or 3 keywords. And that's never enough to actually justify what's inside, which is a wealth of knowledge. And so if algorithms can help you do that tagging, if algorithms can read through your content, then you're definitely coming out on the top, making sense of, like you said, 110-page document without having to go through it word by word.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Got it. Wonderful. Okay. So 2 questions. How are decision makers thinking about generative AI? Are they thinking of it as, there are early adopters who will say, let's try it, I'm sure it'll work. Then there are some early majorities who will say that I know it'll give, and we've had one such customer who said, I know it'll give some benefit, I can't really put my finger to it, but I know it's helping us, right? So there's a general positive sentiment, whereas some are like, hey, I need to measure, if I'm putting this much money, it's saving me these many hours per resource, man days per project. So like, where are leaders thinking? Are they on the experimentation and optimism side, or are they looking at it in terms of core, like hard business numbers?
So let me start this response with one statement that any and every so there are 2 different kinds of IT projects within organizations. So whenever a tech decision maker has to make any decision regarding any technology project, so there will always be some discussion of ROI. And for any IT project, it has to have some ROI. Now, projects could generally come from the core IT budget. So there are 2 different kinds of projects. One is projects coming in from the core IT for core IT projects, and then obviously there is a small budget, and obviously there is a budget which is attached to the core IT projects, and these core IT projects could be ERP projects, CRM projects, or IT operations management. So a whole lot of projects could be housed under this particular category. Then there is a smaller group of projects which comes under the innovation hub or innovation category. What we have seen is most of Gen AI projects, this has been the story till about last year. Most of the Gen AI projects have been housed under this innovation category. I'll give you certain examples of, I will not take names here, but you could say that there are many large banks or insurance companies or financial services firms, even pharmaceutical firms, which are categorizing Gen AI. I'm not talking about traditional AI ML, I'm talking about generative AI. and more recently agentic AI. So agentic AI and generative AI, they are traditionally being clubbed along with the other innovative or innovation projects that are
Yes.
there in the organization, and those are mostly budgets that the organizations have allocated for experimentation. Even having said that, even with this experimentation tag attached to all of these projects, there is still an ROI conversation. And it may not be hard numbers, but it may be, let's say, increased efficiency and productivity. So that is and specifically for Gen AI in enterprise information management, that is one category of benefits that the organizations are looking at. Definitely increase the efficiency and productivity of their employees, and you can measure it in different ways. So that is one definite area that the organizations are looking at.
Absolutely. Actually, we had our first webinar this season on measurement of AI, efficiency of AI, and we actually released our own ROI calculator. So that
Okay.
actually helps you put in, data around the number of employees, the churn that you see, how much you can slightly sort of parameter, how much knowledge is going in, what is the adoption level, and so on. And what you get is an actual savings of time and actual savings of money,
Yeah.
right? Of course, that's a ballpark figure. It's based on a bunch of industry numbers, some coming, of course, from places like IDC. But the intent is to help companies get to that understanding of ROI in terms of increased productivity and efficiency.
And
For
obviously
folks,
there's another angle for client satisfaction, client service. So this is typically in the case of customer service or internally when we talk about IT operations and IT service management, there the numbers are slightly easier to measure. So when you have
tickets
in
of
the context of customer service, then obviously how many tickets have been resolved, and similar is the case with internal IT operations as well. So there the
what's
numbers are easy to measure.
What's interesting is I was speaking to a professional services company who also said the same thing. We kind of asked them what would help if what would be the benefit to you if you get a good solid AI knowledge management system. And they say the number of calls that people make even internally to their seniors and managers, if those reduce, that shows that the platform is actually helping build efficiency, build capability, give assistance to employees without having the dependency on somebody else within the firm, right?
I'll give you a very funny example. I'm being mindful of time, but
Huh.
still, I'll just take a minute and give you this funny example. Do you know, Ketki, that so suppose there are employees who will generally write an email, basically raising a ticket about some query, and after sending that email, they will immediately call the IT person.
Yes, मैंने email
So
भेजा है.
मैंने email भेजा है, check कर लीजिए, वो कर दीजिए. And within 5 minutes he will call again कि वो हुआ नहीं, वो हो रहा है. So just imagine the impact that Gen AI tools or AI tools will have on internal employee satisfaction as well as on external customers service and satisfaction. If all of the if let's say 90, and most of the queries, 90-95% of the queries are like, you know, level one kind, level zero, level one kind of queries.
And
Very,
extremely
very simple.
repetitive.
Very
Yeah,
simple, very repetitive
correct.
queries. So imagine Gen AI or AI based tools can effectively weed out 90-95% of these queries. And this would leave your agents or internal IT employees freer to actually focus on what matters most.
Correct.
So this is this is funny,
Yeah.
but this is true. This is what is happening.
Yes, yes. All right, we are coming towards the end. Sandeep, I want to ask you, for companies here which are small size, medium sized firms, what are some first three small steps that they can take, some actionable that they can quickly implement in their companies to get the first taste of, the first aha moment with generative AI in knowledge
Okay,
management?
sure. So one of the first things that I should do, I should actually recommend is if you remember the Stark framework, the first letter stands for structural changes. I think uh, smaller firms are being led by owners, entrepreneurs, founders. I think the one of the first things that needs to be done is you need to change your mindset that information is a key asset for you, and more so in a smaller organization. Information is definitely a key asset. And when I say information, it not only means external information, but it also means internal information. So any document, any data point which resides in your system, somewhere in your system, or within the systems of your employees. I think that is an asset and it has to be treated like that. Once you start doing that, then you will essentially build a lot of processes, governance tools around that. So I'll give you certain examples. So once you start treating data as an asset, you will start giving access to this data, to this information to different employees. You will not have any silos between different teams or between different employees. You will start giving access to all the employees. So this is one. So there needs to be no bureaucracy as far as data. I mean, obviously there could be certain guardrails because you can't share, every piece of data with everybody. Obviously that will be there, but for general productivity or efficiency purposes, you could probably, let's say, uh, give access to 80-90% of the data set across all employees. And this is not a tool problem. This is not a technology problem. This is a structural problem. This has to be the first step. The second thing that organizations need to take a look at is what kind of systems are they using. So if you look at the journey, if you look at how organizations are using enterprise content management systems or enterprise information management systems, we broadly look at two or three different kinds of tools. One tool is obviously applications. There are different applications which come along with their own repositories. For example, MS Teams would have its own repository. When I say repository, just consider this to be some sort of a database, just for the sake of simplicity. Where does your data get stored from from a specific application? I mean, just for the sake of simplicity. But imagine that even a smaller firm, a larger firm would have, let's say, like a bank
More
would.
sophisticated.
It is more sophisticated. It has like 600, 700 different applications. A smaller firm would also use, let's say, like 10, 15 different applications. And more often than not, each application comes along with its own repository. So my suggestion is that organizations, even smaller firms and professional services firms, need to invest in a proper centralized content management system or a repository, a knowledge base that brings together all of these documents, relevant information onto a single place. And then you need to put across specific processes, for example, metadata, tagging of these documents. This has to be the first step. Until unless you do this, then you will not be able to retrieve any document as and when you need it. So assume that you have 10 different folders in your laptop and you don't know what is there in those folders. You've not named those folders properly. So as and when, let's say, somebody else has your laptop, he will have to individually click onto each individual folder and then look for information. So if you're not naming that folder, if the metadata tagging is not proper, then it is very, very difficult for you to look at how information is first of all collected and then how information is actually organized within the enterprise. Then you should definitely look at and explore tools, AI and Gen AI based tools. I think there are many startups which are doing a fantastic job with knowledge management. So you should definitely leverage AI and Gen AI based tools. I think if you look at how, I'll just give you some specific uh, use cases of these specific tools. Search and discovery of documents. That is a fantastic use case. So now these AI and Gen AI based tools. Uh, so earlier, what used to happen was there was a keyword based search. Now you can have a semantic and NLP based search. So this is a very, very powerful thing. The second thing is most of the employees are currently used to using ChatGPT. The advantage of using AI or Gen AI based knowledge management tool is that it gives you the right, not only the right document but also the right information contained within that document through a ChatGPT kind of a UI. So that is definitely something that you should actively consider. So start from the overall structural problem, then look at what kind of tools are you using. And when I say tools, you need to have a proper knowledge management system, content management system, and it should be AI and Gen AI powered. These are some steps I think most of the organizations should look at. See, ROI definitely should be considered, but I would say that you could maybe look at different pricing models. You could look at hybrid pricing models or SaaS-based pricing models for this. So there should be, I don't think pricing should be a concern if you really focus your attention on driving efficiency and productivity and customer service if you try to focus your attention on the correct matrices, then I don't think it should be a problem.
Yes, perfect. Sandeep, thank you so much. This was a wonderful session. We are checking if there's any questions, but I don't see any. Thank you for your time, Sandeep. We're going to share the notes of this, especially your Stark framework. And if you give us the access to your report, I think it'll be an interesting read for everybody. And
Sure.
that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you, everybody. Stay in touch with us. We'll send you notes, and we will come back next month with a fresh topic for Buzzbox Live. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Ketki.
Sandeep.
Thank you,
Take care.
Ketki. Thank you, BHyve. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.